Now, some of you might ask, well, why Brussels? Why Belgium? Why France? Well, there's simply a large immigrant community there, and they control a certain portion of this community because they chose to conform to Western culture. I mean, the irony here is that there are major movements that scream no immigrants and, force them to adapt to our culture. It is actually the ones who have conformed to Western culture the most that are committing the terrorist acts. It was the Templars and the Crusaders that taught Islam what fanaticism means. Many Templars believe that when you ride into battle, you fight until either you win or you die on the battlefield. There's certain suicidal elements to that philosophy. Western culture is extremism. It is terrorism. They terrorize people and have a monopoly on uses of force. The same monopoly that they accuse the Islamic State of having. They fund guerrilla armies all over the world. They have been caught funneling drugs into America, into the black communities. It was exposed by the San Jose Mercury News. Western culture is Satanism. It is secret society manipulation, and it is using technology, weapons, and a perceived willingness to use them to control people, whether that perception is correct or otherwise. And that is the same thing that ISIS is doing. ISIS is doing everything the West does. Black markets, human trafficking, the oppression of women, okay? And I'm not saying that feminists are correct. Feminists are part of the problem. Women have problems and they are oppressed, but they're actually oppressed by feminists, atheists, the LGBT community, Satanists, the worst criminals, and eugenicists that seek to sterilize them, cause them brain damage when they team up with pharmaceuticals and mental health. Look up the Berzelius Society at Yale. We've heard a lot of Skull and Bones. Why haven't we heard about the Berzelius Society, named after a Swedish chemist? Berzelius, Scroll and Key, and Wolf's Head. Because when you look at the names and what they do and where they place their members, it becomes quite apparent that there is a conspiracy between the super ultra privileged class and hardworking people who have scored well in school, who aren't necessarily the smartest people, but they are very conformist. That is part of how they scored high. And so it has allowed them to reach higher education, Ivy League schools, which demand conformity and obedience, and they condition their students. So when they come out, they are even more conformist than they were before, and they agree with the elite that people who adapt to the system should be rewarded and everyone else should be subjugated. This is what Masons believe, and I've pointed this out in Morals and Dogma. They believe, by Albert Pike, they believe in subjugating men using their intellect, and they believe that they should be the only ones who are allowed to put their foot down and be fanatics. They say they wage a war against fanaticism and radicalism, but they also say in the same chapter that they will not let themselves be deterred. They will not let themselves be intimidated, and that they will push their agenda, which is the exact same mentality that fanatics have. In order to be successful in life and to be independently successful, you have to have an extreme stance. You have to be extremely hardworking, extremely insightful, extremely dedicated. And all these things are characteristics of fanatics. It's their personality traits. So it is quite preposterous what is being done here and the way society rolls with it. I get so many comments that people who read the title of my video and don't watch it through and assume that I am on their side, that I think that we should punish Islam and fanatics and immigrants for this. When, as I have pointed out before, these are the people who have conformed to Western institutions, including the Defense Department, the Department of the Army, military intelligence, the CIA, etc. They are following their directives. They are their auxiliaries and proxy groups. But yet that we turn around and say that it is their culture to blame, when their culture teaches one to have a lot of moral value, moral will, spiritual competence, intellectual acuity, and dedication. Islam and Christianity create superior forms of life. And the oppressors are godless heathens. They are feminists. And this is all too apparent when you study Hollywood. When one looks at the media, when one looks at their works, the works in which you know them by, their philosophies are self-evident. It's really self-explanatory if you just take the time to study things from a sociological perspective, the processes, the institutions, and the societies behind things. We're all aware of a deep state and a secret government. I cannot stress enough that secret government needs secret societies, a secret society structure to run effectively. It needs to plant members on all levels of society and to control all relevant institutions. And of course, on record, that is what the communists and the capitalists did during the Cold War, and the Cold War has never ended. They went out of their way to control social and civic institutions, including churches, schools, and mental health institutions. And they created socially normative standards, standards of social norms that reflect the inferior philosophies of their nation states. While bringing in the problem solution agenda and applying the Hegelian principle to their list of solutions, they have approached their conclusion, their goals. Their enterprise is almost a success. Everyone will know that the governments are to blame, and they will look for a new form of government, and they will turn to the UN. They will say nations always abuse their citizens, and the United Nations always steps in, so we need to dissolve all national governments. They will say that religions oppress women, so we need to dissolve all organized religions and bring in secular humanism, which is really based on the Luciferian doctrine, and that is what the pyramid represents. The I being the perspective, the point of view of Lucifer that mankind is incrementally brought to through the great works of Freemasonry, generation by generation, brick by brick, and to highlight and to celebrate the work of past generations. Those bricks are similar to the bricks of the pyramids of Giza, for instance. They are large bricks that weigh tons. And that symbolizes the progress of past generations, while not belittling the demonic dogs who contributed to this end. I am a transcendent hero, the top martial artist in America, and I refuse to conform to Judeo-European social norms. I refuse to think that hard-working, honest Muslims who treat people fairly are the problems in society when Satanists have all the money, all the guns, and all the power, and they only distribute to them to people who are doing their agenda. Why do you think no one in Hollywood goes against the grain? They're all doing one of the American options. Either they're eugenicists, they're a feminist, they're pushing the LGBT line, they're pushing the conservative line. They're all doing everything in a way that will ultimately result in furthering the agenda of the New World Order. You need to understand desired outcomes, cause and effect, and the most likely outcomes of things before you examine politics. As one of the presidents has said in the past, paraphrasing, if any major event happens, be damn sure that it was planned that way. Beware of the military-industrial complex, Eisenhower. As JFK has said, We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, secret oaths, secret meetings. Again, paraphrasing. And I don't have time to look this up. I'm in a hurry to release this video. And I'll end it there on that note. Thank you. This is the War Temple. You motherfuckers. Ow! 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 The War fucking Temple. Okay, a Belgian state broadcaster, RTBF, has identified two of the attackers who targeted Brussels as brothers Khalid and Ibrahim el-Bakraoui. Now, for those of you who've been watching my videos, you know that I've proven definitively that America spends a ton of money on defense, and Israel shares intelligence, partially at least, with NATO. And so it's safe to say that since Israel admits that it engages in psychological operations, covert operations, and unconventional warfare, that they knew that this was coming, and they almost certainly directed it. These are orders that came down from the top. These guys didn't get the materials they needed by themselves. They went to a group that had the expertise to guide them on how to launch such an operation. So, you know, being the top martial artist in America, where Americans are hiding for my $3,000 challenge, and, you know, I invite them to accept in the comments if they get their heart up, you know, $25 to show up. It is very apparent to me where the threat comes from. That's what I do. I identify threats. I defend myself from them. It's what I do better than anyone else. And I'm telling you that secret societies in their clandestine world are launching these attacks which seem insurmountable so that they can pretend that you need to turn to them for the solution and do whatever they say to keep people safe. They do this time and time again. They did it in the LA riots. They do it all the time, you know. They run psych ops on people, and they control the institutions that people turn to for help, including mental health institutions. If I had a penny for every military or intelligence operative that worked closely with mental health institutions or as staff there, it would be insane. Just Google the CIA doctors. Google eugenics. Google social Darwinism, scientific racism, social biology, and biodemography. These people study the relationships between demographics and, you know, quote unquote, biological conditions, biological dysfunction. And they try to understand the social relationships that lead to, you know, mental illness, whether they be hereditary or environmentally related. But at the end of the day, the stage is always set by the same criminals on the highest level. America spends almost $700 billion in defense, according to a 2013 budget report. And the intelligence community, the defense intelligence community, spends around $100 billion, but the actual number is not known because they collaborate with Big Pharma. You see, Khalid and Ibrahim are just really pawns in a greater chessboard, and both sides of the chessboard are being controlled by the same secret societies for what they consider a desirable outcome. They are running psych ops on me because of my sophisticated, cogent, coherent argument that when one actually hears me out, they are forced to the same conclusions that I have come to a long time ago. I have over 4,000 videos on YouTube with over 10,000 valid sources. I have a top martial arts challenge since December 20, 2013, and another one in around May 2012. They have been hiding from me for almost 4 years on one and almost 3 years on the other. This entire state. Of course, they are aware of it because they control all the major institutions, including the martial arts world, through Hollywood, the UFC, sparring competitions, and dojos whose sifus and masters are in secret societies. They are the bankers. They are the mental health oligarchs, the pharmaceutical oppressors. They wish to repress all uncontrolled and nonconformist political action. They basically give you a list of things that you are allowed to be in America and use their massive budget to enforce it. Either you can be a tranny, a pansy, a pussy, a hypocrite, a weakling, a coward, a Satanist, or another type of subtle Satanist. America is very evil. They are behind these terrorist attacks. I know this for sure. I've studied America for many, many years. Okay? And I've studied mental health, history, politics, geopolitics, social economics, religion, secret societies, psychology and other mental health, quote unquote, sciences, but really pseudosciences for a long time. These people incessantly pursue avenues of depression, and it hasn't eluded me, not for a moment. I've simply refined my arguments over the last 20 years, and now they cannot debate me, and they cannot accept any of my challenges, including $1,000 to whoever can disprove any key point in any one of my 4,000 videos that I have not amended, retracted, or corrected myself. Dumbass slut wanted me to do real kicks. As if that whore can do this. Watch this.